Okay, guys, this is the back end of the lab test review for the arteries and the veins. For each of the following vessels, list what organ or regions of the body it supplies with blood. We'll start with the vertebral artery, and that feeds primarily the brain. The subclavian artery, the arm. The basilar artery, also the brain. The left gastric artery, primarily the stomach and esophagus. The splenic artery, the spleen, the stomach, and the pancreas. The common hepatic artery, the liver, the pylorus of the stomach, and the pancreas. The superior mesenteric artery, the duodenum, the transverse colon, and the pancreas. The inferior mesenteric artery, the large intestine from the left colic flexure down to the rectum. The popliteal artery, the knee joint and the muscles of the thigh and the calf. The internal iliac artery, the walls and viscera of the pelvis, the buttock, and the reproductive organs and bladder. The internal carotid artery supplies the brain. The external carotid artery supplies the face, the scalp, the skull, and the meninges. The internal carotid artery, internal thoracic artery, the anterior chest wall and the breasts, and the suprarenal artery, the adrenal glands. Okay, now we move on to the veins. We want to ID the following veins on each of the following slides. If there is a right and left form of the vessel, be sure to state which is being indicated in the photo. So remember that when you guys get ready for your practical, is that right and left are going to be important. Okay. Now, there's no need for a right or left if it's an unpaired vessel. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, A is pointing to the superior vena cava. B to the pulmonary veins. Remember that the pulmonary veins carry oxygenated blood and they carry it back to the heart into the left atrium. Over here, A is indicating the superior vena cava, B the right pulmonary veins, C the inferior vena cava, D the coronary sinus, and E the left pulmonary veins. Keep in mind that we're looking at the back of the heart. Okay, so this is the right side and this is the left side. There is the aortic arch right there. Okay, and incidentally, this is the back side of the left atrium. Okay, moving on. A is pointing to the superior vena cava, and B is pointing to the left pulmonary vein. The left pulmonary vein. Those are the auricles. There's the aorta and pulmonary trunk. Okay, this is a view of the back side of the heart. A is pointing to the left pulmonary vein, B, the superior vena cava, C, the right pulmonary vein, D, the inferior vena cava, and E, the coronary sinus. Okay, this is a heart butterflied open. Remember that this is the posterior end of the heart. This is the anterior end of the heart. Okay, and so if we look very carefully, what we can see here is the aorta right here, coming right off of the left ventricle. Okay, this is the right ventricle, and that makes this vessel the superior vena cava. Okay, bringing blood back into the right atrium. The right atrium. Okay, so keep in mind again the difference between the left and the right side of the heart. The left side of the heart, indicated here by the smaller but more muscular ventricle, okay, pumps blood to the rest of the body via the aorta. The right side of the heart, primarily via the right ventricle, pumps blood into the pulmonary trunk. There is the pulmonary semilunar valve, and this is how the blood exits the heart and heads onto the lungs. Okay. Okay. Next up, we have a view of the upper thoracic and cervical region on the brown torso. A is indicating the right brachiocephalic vein, B the superior vena cava, and C the left brachiocephalic vein. Another view, some more vessels. A is indicating the right subclavian vein, B the right internal jugular vein, C the left brachiocephalic, and D the left subclavian. Okay. Close-up view, again, looking at the vessels in the cervical region. A is the right subclavian. B is the right internal jugular. C is the left internal jugular. D is the left external jugular. And E is the left subclavian. Left subclavian. Okay. Notice that you have an internal, and an external jugular on each side. Okay. Here you can see the superficial vessels, and here you can see the deep vessels. Okay. This is why you can see the external jugular on this side. That's one of the things you have to keep in mind when you look at the Brown torso model, is that as you look at him, as he is facing you, the right side is going to be the superficial side, the left side is going to be the deep side. Okay, here we're looking at the right half. This is again the deep vessels, the deep veins on the right side of the cervical region, and what you're looking at here with A and B is the right internal jugular vein. Right internal jugular vein. Okay, coming straight up. Okay, this is a view of the thoracic cavity, and again, superficial view here, deep view here, deep view here. Okay, so we've switched it up because we're missing a lung. We can see the back part of the body wall. So what are we looking at on this particular diagram? A, you're looking at the pulmonary vein, the red vessel. Remember that the veins in the pulmonary circulation carry oxygenated blood back to the heart. B is the hemiazygous vein. Hemiazygous vein. That's spelled Hemiazygous. Hemiazygous vein. C is the posterior intercostal vein. Posterior intercostal vein. Intercostal means between the ribs. Between the ribs. This is the diaphragm. Okay. These are the kidneys. This is the adrenal gland right here. Okay. So that you know basically where you are. Okay. This is sort of a zoom out. And what you're looking at here in A is the axillary vein. Runs under the arm. Over here in B, this is the renal vein. C, over here, the inferior vena cava. And D, the suprarenal vein that serves the adrenal gland, drains it. E, the gonadal vein. Now, interesting thing about the gonadal veins is that they're a little bit different on the left side of the body than on the right side of the body. Notice that on the left side of the body, the gonadal vein, the suprarenal vein, both drain into the renal vein, which drains into the inferior vena cava. But on the other side of the body, the gonadal vein and the suprarenal vein drain directly into the inferior vena cava. They don't drain into the renal vein. So we are not perfectly symmetrical in this region with regard to our plumbing. Okay. F is the cephalic vein over here. Cephalic vein. We said that E was the gonadal vein. D, the suprarenal. G is the common iliac. The common iliac. Now, how do I know that? Well, because this is right where the inferior vena cava splits, and just as in the arterial system, prior to the branching, what we have is a common iliac, which will then branch into an external and an internal iliac vein that drain now the organs of the abdominal, the pelvic region, and the lower limbs. Okay, moving on. This is just a zoom up here. A indicating the renal vein. B, the gonadal vein. Notice how it jacks directly into the inferior vena cava, whereas over here it feeds into the renal vein on the left side. Okay, so again, not symmetrical. Okay. C, the inferior vena cava. D, the internal iliac. The internal iliac. This is after the branch. It basically breaks posteriorly and medially and heads down into the abdominal pelvic region. Okay, E, the external iliac. The external iliac. Okay, and as we keep moving, F is the common iliac vein. The common iliac. And G is the left gonadal vein. The left gonadal vein, heading all the way up here, draining into the renal vein. Okay. All right. Moving down. Moving down. Up here, this is the phrenic vein, the inferior phrenic vein, and it drains the diaphragm. The diaphragm. Okay. All right. What we've done here is we're looking at the abdominal pelvic region, and what we've removed is the front part of the GI so that we can look at the mesentery that suspends the colon. And what you've got here is the ascending, and the transverse colon would be here, but it's been pulled away in the model. And this would be the descending, and then back here is the sigmoid colon. And the veins that drain the colon are called the mesenterics. Now, just to orient you, this guy over here, again, this is the inferior vena cava. The inferior vena cava. Okay, he's not lettered in this diagram. A is the hepatic portal vein. The hepatic portal vein. The hepatic portal vein brings blood that is rich in nutrients from the GI back to the liver, and what the liver decides to do with it is either store that material for future use as fat and glycogen, or send it on to the rest of the body as nutrients for immediate energy use. Okay, B is the superior mesenteric vein, and C is the inferior mesenteric vein. Inferior mesenteric vein. Why are they called mesenteric veins? Because this tissue that connects the large intestine to the abdominal pelvic cavity is called mesentery. It's a type of connective tissue, and there are a lot of blood and nerves and lymphatics that move through this mesentery and serve this lower part of the GI. Okay, what we've done here is we have pulled the GI out. Okay, we're looking at the back part of what we were looking at the front of here. Okay, so this is the front, this is the back, this is the back. This is the duodenum. This is the duodenum right here. Okay, and this is the ascending. The transverse colon, not visible because it would whip around the front of this. Okay, this is the descending. Okay, and then down here on the small insert, this is the sigmoid colon, and this is the mesentery. This is the mesentery. Okay, so A is the splenic vein. The splenic vein. B is the hepatic portal vein, and C is the superior mesenteric vein. Okay, so you can kind of see that. This is what it would look like from the front, okay, and then what it does is it feeds through the back. This is the pancreas right here, okay. The pancreas is in between the spleen, which would be over on this lateral part of the body wall, and it's hugged right in here next to the duodenum. This is the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine. Okay, moving on, this is the back of the liver, and this is the inferior vena cava. This is the hepatic portal vein, and just so that you know, this is the gallbladder. Okay, the gallbladder stores bile. Bile is important in emulsifying the fat that comes from the stomach so that we can more easily digest it into fatty acids and glycerol, transport it eventually through the walls of the small intestine into structures known as lacteals, which are actually a portion of the lymphatic system, and there they eventually rejoin the circulatory system at the right and left subclavian veins. Okay, so this is called the portia hepatis. This is the entry to the liver, and the way the hepatic portal vein works is that the hepatic artery and the hepatic portal vein merge, and what happens now is a mixture of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood perfuse the liver, and once inside the liver, what happens is that the blood chemistry is adjusted, and the nutrient content is either reduced or enhanced by the liver depending on the body's energy needs. And in addition to that, the liver synthesizes a significant number of serum proteins that are added to the blood, including albumin. It also adjusts the blood chemistry, and then the blood exits the liver through the renal veins proper, which feed directly into the inferior vena cava, this vessel here. So they jack in on either side here, and then we head back up to the heart. Okay. Over here, again, we have to remember what we're looking at on either side. Okay, and so what we're seeing here on the left side is the superficial aspect, and over here we're looking at the deep aspect of the leg. Okay, so the right side of the model down here, this is deep, this is superficial. Okay, so what is A? A is the femoral vein. It's the femoral vein because it has now left the confines of the abdominal pelvic cavity, and now it is a deep vein near the femur, hence the name the femoral vein. On the other side, we see a superficial vessel that runs along the medial aspect of the thigh. This is the great saphenous vein, Okay, this is the leg model, and just to orient you, this is the vertebral column. These are the lumbar spinal nerves. This is part of the cauda equina. This is the sacrum. This is the coccyx. Okay, and this is the medial aspect. So we're looking at the inside of the thigh here to orient you. Okay, the inside of the thigh. This is the ilium. Okay, so A is pointing to the iliac vein, and B is pointing to the femoral vein. Okay, once we've left again the confines of the pelvic girdle, we're now in the leg. We are now the femoral vein. Here is the anterior hip and thigh. So all we've done here is we've taken this model and we've flipped it this way and we've rolled it towards you. And so what you're looking at here again is the iliac vein and the femoral vein. Okay. All right. Down we go. Back of the knee. Okay. This is the popliteal vein. Okay. The region behind the knee is called the popliteal region. And so you will see the popliteal nerve, the popliteal vein, and the popliteal artery, all here behind the knee. Okay, moving on. This is a little bit different. These questions are a little tougher. In each case, what we're looking at here is not the indicated vein, although I will name it for you, but you're being asked to name the immediate tributary or tributaries of that vein. Now, what is a tributary? It's something that flows into that vein. So what we're asking is what drains in to the indicated vein. So let's start here. This is the right subclavian vein. I'm sorry, this is the right brachiocephalic vein. My mistake. And what drains into it is the internal and external jugular vein. Okay, there's the external jugular on this side, and also the subclavian vein, which is out here under the clavicle. Okay, down here we have the superior vena cava. Okay, and what does the superior vena cava receive blood from? It receives it from the left and right brachiocephalic vein. Okay, there is the left brachiocephalic, there is the right brachiocephalic vein. Okay, moving down. Here we've got the subclavian vein. So where does the subclavian vein receive blood from? The axillary vein and the cephalic vein. Okay, what happens is that this guy will split, and the axillary vein will proceed under the arm. The cephalic vein will be a superficial vessel running along the surface of the arm. Okay, moving on. A here, we have again the brachiocephalic vein. This is the right brachiocephalic vein, and it receives blood from the right external and internal jugular veins and the right subclavian vein. Over here, we have the left brachiocephalic vein, and it receives blood from the left external and internal jugulars and the left subclavian vein as well. Okay, moving on. A. A is the accessory hemiazygous vein. The accessory hemiazygous vein on the posterior left side of the thoracic cavity behind the left lung. And it receives blood from the posterior intercostals, the veins that drain blood from between the ribs, and the hemiazygous vein, which is basically below it. Okay. B is the left renal vein, and it receives blood from the left suprarenal vein and the left gonadal vein. Okay. There is the left gonadal vein. There is the left suprarenal vein. Okay, C over here, the inferior vena cava. This is the inferior vena cava, and it receives blood from the left and right common iliacs. The left and right common iliacs. Okay, D is the common iliac vein down here, and it receives blood from the internal and external iliac vein. Okay, there's the external, and the internal kind of breaks down here. You can hardly see it. Okay, remember that this is the back side of the intestinal region. This is the duodenum. Okay, this is actually something called the bile duct. The bile duct, and it drains into the duodenum where it merges with the pancreatic duct. So this is how you can tell it's the bile duct. It is a green color. And what vein is this? This is the hepatic portal vein, and it receives blood from the splenic vein and the superior mesenteric vein. Okay, the splenic vein breaks over here. The spleen would be over here. Okay, and the superior mesenteric vein drains blood from the anterior portion, the superior portion of the small intestine. Okay, over here we have the hepatic portal vein, and this is the back of the liver. Okay, so if we were to flip this guy around, this would be the right side of the liver. Okay, and this is going to be the left side of the liver. Remember that the liver's on the right side of your body. The hepatic portal vein here receives blood from the splenic vein and the superior mesenteric vein. And where does it go next? It goes into the liver. And in the liver, what happens is that the nutrient content is adjusted, the blood is detoxified, and protein components are also added to the serum, among many other things that happen in the liver. Okay, this is the anterior part of the leg, and what you're looking at here is the femoral vein. This is the femoral vein, and its tributary is the popliteal vein. As this guy runs deep into here, he's going to shoot behind the knee, at which point he will be the popliteal vein. The popliteal vein. Okay, a couple of questions here. What is 1 pointing to in each of these slides? Here, here, and here. What structure is number 1 pointing to? It is an artery. You can tell that because of the substantial smooth muscle layer, the more rounded shape, and 2 is pointing to a vein. Okay, you can tell that because of the irregular shape of the lumen and the relatively small layer of smooth muscle around the veins. Okay, more vessel questions. There are internal and external jugular veins. Is there a common jugular vein? And the answer is no. Question 2. Does the hepatic portal vein deliver blood to the liver or drain it from the liver? And the answer is it delivers blood to the liver from the gastrointestinal system. This is how the nutrients make it eventually to the liver as the organ that's going to determine where those nutrients ultimately go. And then once that happens, the blood passes out of the liver through the hepatic veins proper, which jack directly into the superior vena cava. Okay, how is the pattern of the gonadal, the suprarenal, and the renal vein connections different on the right side of the body compared to the left side? On the left side of the body, the gonadal and suprarenal veins drain into the renal vein, and on the right side of the body, the gonadal and suprarenal veins drain into the inferior vena cava. The inferior vena cava. And then we have a list here. Which three veins on your list of veins in the lab manual are superficial veins? And there's actually more than one, more than three. And if we look here in the lab manual, you want to go to, let's see here, page 76, okay? And the superficial veins include the great saphenous, the external jugular, the axillary, the cephalic, and the basilic veins. The rest of the veins are considered to be deep, meaning they're not immediately near the overlying skin. They're much deeper in the body. Okay, next block of questions. Okay, what are the major veins that drain blood from the brain? And those are the internal and external jugulars. Why are the hepatic veins not visible on the torso model? Well, there's a couple reasons for that. For one, on most of the torso models, the liver was removed, and those vessels are attached to the liver, so you weren't really able to see them very well. If you look real close, right under the diaphragm, you might be able to see where they jack in to the inferior vena cava, but it wasn't something that we stressed. What are the tributaries of the hepatic portal vein? Those are the superior mesenteric and the splenic veins. Next question. There is not both a right and left brachiocephalic artery. Is there both a right and left brachiocephalic vein? And the answer is yes. The next question. Do pulmonary veins appear as red or blue vessels on the torso model? They appear as red. Remember that they're bringing oxygenated blood back from the lungs to the heart. Okay. Next question. Soon after a meal, which vessel, the hepatic artery or the hepatic portal vein, is likely to have blood with the highest nutrient content? And the answer is the hepatic portal vein. The hepatic portal vein is draining nutrient-rich blood directly from the GI. It will eventually merge with the hepatic artery and supply now a combination of oxygen-rich and nutrient-rich blood to the liver, which the liver will then clean. But when we're talking about right after a meal, we're talking about the hepatic portal vein as it drains blood directly from the GI. Okay, the next question. The veins on the list of veins in the lab book, which are considered to be superficial rather than deep, and we had that list: the basilic, the cephalic, the axillary, the external jugular vein, and the great saphenous vein, all considered to be superficial. Okay, that's it. Good luck studying for the lab practical coming Saturday. I'm going to put some useful links up on the lab portion of the Angel website. Please take advantage. I'm sure you'll find them useful, and I'll see everybody in class.